Your Humanities Half-hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Hafadeid and Tiro, welcome to your Humanities Half-hour. I'm Catherine Perry. Well, every year, the Northern Marianas Humanities Council awards the 2008 Governor's Humanities Awards for outstanding contributions to the humanities by individuals and organizations in our community. And over the last couple weeks, we've spoken with a couple of the awardees, Gordon Marciano and Cecilio Raikerpi. And today we're here with the awardee for Preservation of CNMI History, Galvin Deleon Guerrero. Galvin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Catherine. Thanks for having me.
You wear many hats in the community. People probably know you as the principal of Carmel School, but maybe equal to that, if not surpassing that, is your involvement in the arts, specifically in filmmaking. Tell us, what is it that brought you to be recommended for this award?
Well, I produced and wrote and directed a couple of 2 of 3 film adaptations of the We Drank Our Tears book, which was a book published 15 years ago to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the end of the World War II battles on Saipan and Tinian. And the book is essentially a collection of oral histories of the civilian experience during the war, or during those battles. And so at Mount Carmel School, we produced 3 films that are adapted from 3 stories from the book. And I'm assuming that's why I got the award.
I'm sure it is. We actually have a copy of the book here with us. And one of the things that makes this book unique is that it was actually written by children.
Yes. And that's kind of a great way to bring it full circle. I remember working with Catherine Tooten Puckett and a bunch of other people with the Pacific Star Writers Foundation and also the Humanities Council at the time. And it was important to have the children of the day interview their elders who were still alive to chronicle the experience during the war. So 15 years later, we have a new generation of children, of kids. And it's sort of the same concept. So we're going back to this book and we're taking these kids and they're essentially retelling the stories in film. So back 15 years ago, these junior high kids, high school kids, they interviewed their elders, they took down their stories, and then they even did drawings, right? Yeah. So 15 years later, to do film adaptations is sort of a great evolution of that process.
Did you find that the students you're working with today feel a connection at all to the story? I mean, it's been so long since the war happened. A lot of our family members and that have gone through it, our residents here that have gone through it, many have passed away. What was the feeling of the kids in working on these films?
Well, the feeling was exactly what I was hoping would happen. They began to realize that these were real people who experienced a real struggle in a real war. I mean, this was not fiction, right? This really happened. And so when you're doing a film, you have to sort of mimic reality, right? You have to make it feel real. And so in the process, whether it be exploring the characters, developing the stories, designing the cinematography, it all has to reach what we call verisimilitude, where it's very similar to reality. And so for them, it was an awakening of history for them. And one really kind of cool thing that happened is in one of the films, Raphael Mufness, we were casting a student, right? And we found this kid, Derek Atalik, who plays Raphael Mufness in the story. And he was perfect. He was great. He was, And when we were done shooting and we were in post-production editing the film and getting ready to premiere it, Derek's mom comes to us and tells us, I don't know if you know this, no one in the cast or crew knew this, but Derek's mom tells us that his grandfather is Raphael Mufnes. And we were just like, what? Derek didn't know, we didn't know, but in a way it was just a good example of what these projects are about, and it definitely made it more real, so we all got goosebumps, and it made the premiere that much more powerful.
How could you decide out of the many powerful stories in this book which ones you were going to start with, number one, and how do you decide where you're going?
Well, the first one was Francisco Babauta's story. And the reason why we chose that story is that the central struggle in that story really, it captures the title of the book and the essence of the book. Because in the book, the title of the book is We Drank Our Tears, right? That's the name of the series. And it's like they were so thirsty, but all they could drink was their pain, right? That's all. Trying to survive, that's all they could take was their pain. And of course, the broader message is that their pain became, in a way, their salvation. So in Francisco Babauta's story, the main struggle is just to find something to drink. And there's this great moment where, Francisco's family is just trying to find something to drink. They don't want to die of dehydration.
Everybody can relate to being thirsty.
Exactly, sure. Exactly. But then they run into a Japanese soldier who's also thirsty. So we see that this struggle cuts across, race, ethnicity, language. And so we felt it was a good starting point. And then the next two stories, Benjamin Abadilla and Raphael Mufnes. For Raphael Mufnes, we had a couple of students who I felt were ready to direct a film, so I let them choose a film. So they went through the book, and these two students, they're buddies. So they picked a buddy story. Raphael Mufnes is really at its heart a story of two buddies trying to survive a war. And then for my story, the next one that I directed, which was Benjamin Abadilla's story, I wanted to pick that story. I picked that story for two reasons. One, it is very bloody, and it was just very visceral. Like there's a pregnant woman who is injured, and it's just a very visceral story. And I wanted to sort of raise the bar in our storytelling, and I wasn't trying to get gory. I was just trying to show that, hey, this is war, right? But then the second reason I wanted to do it is that Benjamin Abadilla is half Chamorro, half Filipino, and I felt it was important that people were made aware of the fact that there were Filipinos on island who also suffered through the war, and that this was as much their story as it is the story of the indigenous people. So I felt that was important to accentuate or emphasize.
We don't have a lot of resources, film resources, about our stories in the Marianas, so it's really great that you've undertaken this. Why did you choose to tell this story in particular instead of some ancient legends, which I'm sure you could have told as equally well, or even a modern documentary? Why this story? Why these stories?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, I think one of the reasons is when you watch movies about war, they're almost always from the perspective of soldiers. And in fact, almost all the films about the war in the Pacific, almost all of them, especially the big ones, they're told from the perspective of the soldier. Flags of Our Fathers, Iwo Jima, all these stories are from the perspective of soldiers. And it's not to say that that perspective is not a valid perspective, but here in the Marianas, we have, it's unique because the people didn't ask for the war to come here, right? I mean, they had lived through centuries of colonization, right? And then all of a sudden this war comes to their shores, and it's just baffling. And I don't know. I felt it was a story that needed to be told. These stories. I remember when I was part of the committee that for the commemoration of the 60th anniversary, and we were working on this book. I always knew that we were going to somehow dramatize these stories, whether it be on stage or in film. And it was sometimes when you ask an artist like, where did this come from? It's like, well, I don't know. It's like it calls you, right? There's this. I don't know if you've read that book, Eat, Pray, Love, by Elizabeth Gilbert.
No.
It was turned into a movie with.
I think I watched the movie.
Julia Roberts.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was her big breakout movie, right? Book. So after the book, she was kind of stuck. She's like, oh, what do I do? So she didn't know what to do. So she wrote a book about creativity. She called it Big Magic, and she said that it takes a little pressure off the artist when you treat your visions as sort of external to you. There are these great ideas floating out there, and sometimes the ancient Greeks called them the muses, right? Sometimes these ideas come to you, and you can either accept them or reject them or ignore them. So I would like to think that maybe I just accepted it. Yeah, In fact, I remember I run every morning, and oftentimes I'll run through the park, and I'd always run by the memorial that, lists all those who died, the civilians who died, and it always gives me the chills. It's like, hey, you got to tell the story. You got to tell the story. Someone has to tell our story. So I guess that's where it came from.
What kind of reception are you getting for the films?
It's surprising. I was not when we just wanted to do one, the first one, right? We're like, okay, we've talked about doing this long enough. Let's just do one. Partnered up with Tribe Marianas, NMC, got a few people to come in, and we actually did this over the summer because we just needed the time to do it. And that just was a phenomenal success. I mean, I've been doing film and theater for over 20 years. And so I never stopped to think, okay, this is going to be a hit. This is going to be a hit. Let's just move on to the next project. And Francisco Babazzo was a huge success. And then we're like, okay, well, let's tell more. So we told 2 more. And then those were even bigger successes. Winning Best of Festival at the Guam Film Festival, being nominated for, all 3 films have been nominated for major awards. Now they're on Amazon, and we track the sales, and they're like, people are actually watching this stuff. So it's been very surprising, and maybe that says something about these kinds of stories that our people, and when I say our people, I speak inclusively, for anyone that calls the Marianas their home. Our people have important stories that can be told and should be told. And I think that's been the most rewarding experience, is to know that these stories resonate with people and that people want these stories. I mean, I got so many emails and calls like, hey, when can we watch this? So that's why we worked hard with Amazon. It took months of negotiations, and now it's on Amazon. So the whole world can see it. And now we're going to be producing 3 and maybe even 4 more, maybe even 5 more. I was talking with Phil Mendiola.
I think that would be warmly received.
Yeah, I think so too.
If you have the energy.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens next.
Well, talking about producing more, I can imagine this is not an easy thing to do. Was this like a labor of love? Or tell us a little bit about the technical side of bringing these films to reality.
So we came up with a joke on the set of the last 2 films. They say, oh, this is like low-budget filmmaking, indie filmmaking. And we're like, well, I wouldn't call it low-budget filmmaking. It's more like no-budget filmmaking.
I remember when the first film came out, and I believe your daughter was the one who did the production design.
Yes.
And she was talking about how you could use baby oil to keep the shirts looking sweaty, and tea to stain the clothes.
Yes.
I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like I said, I've been doing this for over 20 years, stage and film, and so you just learn a lot of tricks along the way. Now, to be sure, you need good cameras with good lenses and good audio. And so in our program at Mount Carmel, we've invested in that equipment over the years. And we've also been able to partner with people like Tribe Marianas and NMC that have some of the equipment. So, having the equipment is really a big part of it. And then we just take the time to train the students involved in how to use the gear. And once you have the equipment and the gear, and the people that are trained in the gear, then you just have to figure out the look, right? Like you were saying, just get creative, and then it all kind of comes together. It's a lot of us spend our own money, feeding the cast and crew.
Very important. Got to keep them happy, or everything goes downhill quickly.
Craft services is a very, very important thing. So that's a lot of stuff. We would just spend our own money on that. And then we would spend money on some of the art stuff you have to buy, but we didn't have to buy all that much. A lot of the money does go into registering for the festivals, distribution rights online. It goes to all the lawyers. The artists themselves, we don't really see much of it.
Well, we're coming up this year on the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Saipan. Why is it still important, you feel, for us to go back and revisit and recreate in a new format these stories? Why is it important to remember the suffering?
I think because there is a great affinity we can find given our recent experience with Super Typhoon Yutu. Really, that experience is very similar to the experience during the war. In both experiences, people were just trying to survive, right? In both experiences, they feared for their livelihoods, for the welfare of their families. And in both experiences, there was this effort to reach out, to seek help from others and help others. And the resilience that it takes to survive a war is very similar to the resilience it takes to survive a typhoon. And I think there's a lot of significance to that affinity, and if we can use that affinity to help people remember, I think that's important. For me personally, I really think it's important that we remember our history. We don't just know it, but we remember it. And when I say remember, I mean sort of collectively as a people. It's sort of like if you forget your past, you forget who you are. This is not just some abstract, page in a book about someone else's history. This is the history that makes us who we are and what we are. And even right down to just think that if one person, if your great grandfather didn't survive the war, you would not be here. There's a very direct link there, right? And that's if we take that and we think of it in broader terms, who we are as a people, where we are as a society, there's a lot of, I think it's something that we have to do. And, and also when we think of sort of some of the divisiveness in our world, I think we can find common ground in knowing that, we can survive anything. That's sort of the cool message of these stories, right? We can survive anything. So we just need to remember that. And telling these stories is one way of helping all of us remember that.
Well, we're speaking today with the 2018 Governor Humanities Awardee for Preservation of CNMI History, Galvin Deleon Guerrero, and we'll be back with more after this break.
Did you know that you can donate up to $5,000 to the Humanities Council through the CNMI Education Tax Credit Program? Donations from individuals and corporations qualify and can be used to offset your local wage and salary tax, BGRT, and earnings tax. Call our office at 235-4785 to see how you can support humanities programs in our community and obtain a tax credit for your donation. Sizu'us ma'asi, olomai, and thank you.
Welcome back to your Humanities Half Hour. Galvin, you have actually with all the pots you have on the stove, you actually have another theater production that has just been presented to the community, Tasi, with the Carmel School Theatre Club. Tell us about this play.
Well, it's we kind of have a running joke in our theater club that the one time we decide to tell a story about the ocean strikes back with a super typhoon, So Tasi, as our listeners may know, is the Chamorro word for ocean, right? And we were supposed to do Tasi back in December. This was going to be our big December musical, and then
because you guys have a musical or a big play every
December,
every year, or
every
is it
year,
every
December, December.
Every December.
We tend to do our big musicals in December, and this was going to be one of them. I mean, we've done Mulan, we've done Lion King, we've done White Christmas.
You've done them well.
I would like to think so. So this was supposed to be another big one, and this was going to be our big island musical, right? In fact, this is our year of island storytelling. Everything we're doing today is about the islands. We have a film coming up called Isla, which I'm directing. That's a story about contemporary Saipan.
Oh, okay.
So Tasi was, we just did it, and we had sold out shows for both nights. And
congratulations.
Yeah.
What is the story?
Whew. So it's kind of inspired by Moana, Disney's Moana, but... and we actually thought about doing Moana, but we're like, no, we're going to tell a story about the Marianas.
Nice.
So, Tasi is a story about the main character, whose name is Tasi, whose mother passed away when she was young, and so she lives with her father, Tanu, who is the chief of the people. And her mom's name was Unai, so Tano means land, Tasi means ocean, Unai means beach, sand. So her mom was sort of the glue between them. So without the mom there, Unai, there's this rift that emerges between them because Tano wants her to keep her feet planted on the land. And she feels her spirit calling her out to the ocean.
Okay.
And so... her mom's sister, her aunt, his name is Rostru, and Rostru means vortex in Chamorro. And we call her Rostru because she likes to stir things up. She literally stirs the pot.
Okay. I love
So
this.
the story, when Rostru enters the picture, it really stirs the pot, if you will, and it moves it along. So the story is about how Tasi just wants to be her namesake. She wants to be in the ocean, but her dad wants her to remain loyal to the land, and so there's a struggle between them that reaches very epic proportions. I don't want to ruin it because we may be releasing a film version of this sometime soon. Yeah, so
nice.
I don't want to spoil it.
So you're not going to tell the end. I thought you were, but
no,
okay.
no. So, but it gets interesting because it then becomes a story not just about Tasi the character, but it becomes an environmental story about Tasi the ocean and how we need to take care of the ocean. So it was a great show. We took some very famous Disney songs from like Lilo and Stitch, and with the help of Uncle Donald Mendiola, we translated them into Chamorro.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We also did some original Chamorro songs like Tristizu. That was a huge hit. And we had a lot of, island-based dancing, and we mixed in, Tahitian, Polynesian with Chamorro and Carolinian, and it was just this beautiful harmony of our island cultures on stage with great music.
Did you feel that the students involved had any different reaction to doing this kind of localized production versus, as you said, the Disney or Junior Disney productions you've done in the past? Was there any difference you feel?
Yeah, what was really nice about this was the cultural awakening that a lot of them experienced. I'm not very fluent in Chamorro, right? So I get a lot of help. But when I wrote the script and we started reading through it and rehearsing. I was surprised that they were like, "Oh, okay, Mr. G, what does this mean? Okay, well, why is this character named that?" And I'm like, "Well, something's wrong when I'm the Chamorro expert here. Okay, something's seriously wrong." But that aside, it was great for them to discover that. You know, some of them are Chamorro, some of them are not, but they got excited about their language, their culture, their heritage. So that was really cool, you know.
That's a success in itself, even if you hadn't sold out.
Yeah. So for the kids, it was great, from the acting to the singing to the dancing to right down to the art design. Everything was done with our mind focused on celebrating our island cultures, and I think we pulled it off.
So what's ahead for you in your Preservation of CNMI History?
We're looking at more films in the We Drank Our Tears series. Definitely, we thought we were going to do 3 more, but we might now be doing 4 more, maybe 5 more. And we have we're now getting the support of the Saipan Mayor's Office, the American Memorial Park. We're going to continue to collaborate with Tribe Marianas and with NMC. But the really cool thing is that the Muñoz brothers from Guam have signed on as producers. So, I mean, these guys they've won festivals worldwide. And so the fact that they see enough potential in this project to sign on as producers, it's like, man, that brings a lot of street cred to the show, you know. So we're excited for that. So that's going to be rolling out this summer. We start shooting after in a week or 2. And then, this summer it'll premiere.
If any of our listeners are interested in helping out with this project, how can they do that?
You know, the easiest way to help, honestly, is to watch our films on Amazon. You just go to Amazon, just search for We Drank Our Tears. They are available for rent. All that money goes towards ongoing production costs. And so the nice thing about that is not only are you supporting it financially, but you're also supporting it, giving it moral support, and getting to know these stories more. You know, so that's what I would suggest. Go to Amazon and rent the films.
All right. Any final thoughts before we go?
You know, earlier we were talking about why all of this, right? Why we tell these stories. And then I was thinking about the fact that the Humanities Council has recognized these stories. I think that's the real reason. Is it speaks to our humanity, right? I think earlier I talked about this time of divisiveness. I think what we need more, what the medicine that we all need right now, is more empathy. And that empathy reminds us of not only our own humanity, but the humanity of the other. So when we watch these stories, when we experience these stories, when we remember these stories, it cultivates more empathy in us, and that, I believe, reaffirms our humanity. And I think that is something we should all strive for.
Our guest today has been the 2018 CNMI Governor's Humanities Awardee, Galvin Deleon Guerrero, awarded for Preservation of CNMI History. Galvin, thank you so much for not only your time today, but also the contributions you're making to our community through these projects.
Thank you, Kat.
This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.